The Deadliest Enemy, next on Chronicle.
Their eyes full of promise and possibilities. They are young, athletic. Lisa, a longtime runner, celebrating her 40th. Kevin, at 29, finally finding the love of his life. Dedicated nurses, young moms with beautiful, adoring families, all non-smokers, and tragically, all gone. They are the new face of lung cancer, blindsided by a deadly diagnosis.
They sat us down and they said that you have an advanced stage lung cancer. We looked at each other and said, that's insane. There's absolutely no way this is cancer.
And why did you think that?
There was nothing that would have indicated that she was in a high-risk group for cancer of any kind.
And she didn't smoke?
Never smoked.
Sarah Monopoly was the epitome of good health. She loved the outdoors. She and husband Rich met on a cycling trip.
She was graceful in everything she did, the way she moved and spoke and engaged with other people. And it's something that I admired and I loved to watch. We just knew at some point that we had to be together.
They married and settled in West Newton. Sarah was expecting her first child, a baby girl. Her pregnancy smooth until the very end.
In like the 39th week, we were there in the pregnancy. She started to have severe back pain.
Nothing could have prepared the Monopolies for the news doctors delivered: advanced lung cancer. It's a trend doctors cannot explain. Over 60% of new lung cancer patients are non-smokers. Many, like Sarah, have never even touched a cigarette. Increasingly, they are young, and they are predominantly women.
How much of your practice do you see these young people being
All
diagnosed?
All the time. Saw one today. Saw one 15 minutes ago. Non-smoker, 40 some odd years old. And it's crazy, the young woman, small kids.
Dr. Engelman is one of the country's top lung cancer researchers. His team at Mass General, on the verge of major treatment breakthroughs, is baffled by what's causing the spike in cases.
The truth is, we don't know why all of a sudden these cancers are becoming more and more common. We don't understand what risk factor or what environmental factor has all of a sudden led to this really epidemic of non-smokers who develop lung cancer.
It's a harsh diagnosis, the deadliest of all cancers. Only 15% survive 5 years.
When you do research, when you're diagnosed and you see that, it's just so disheartening. And I know it was for him, I know it was for me.
Stephanie's fiancé, Kevin Brummett, never smoked. In fact, he ran marathons.
It was so shocking to think that someone he was 29 when he was diagnosed and totally healthy otherwise. He was on a softball team when he started feeling like something was wrong. He thought he pulled a muscle in his calf, and it ended up being a blood clot.
Kevin lived 20 months, longer than the average length after diagnosis of just 1 year.
This is Kevin Brummett.
Long enough to say I do to the woman he loved so much, but barely. Stephanie married and then tragically buried Kevin just days later.
And now all of a sudden I realized that I have to move forward with my life and I have to make all these big changes and he's not going to be there. And that's, it's just so hard to wrap my head around.
For Sarah, it was a short battle. She gave birth to a beautiful daughter, Vivian, and immediately started fighting to survive. But chemotherapy wasn't enough. It quickly became clear she wouldn't live to see her little girl's first steps.
Yeah, we talked about make sure she gets to ballet and make sure she gets to do the things that little girls get to do. So we did talk about that.
Sarah died February 24th, 2008, at the age of 35.
Did she just feel like her body quit?
She felt like her body betrayed her when she had done all the right things, and her body didn't cooperate. Let's do this one with the birdie on it.
The birdie?
Yeah, do the birdie.
Rich, raising their precious Vivian alone, sees Sarah's spirit all around them.
Sarah was outspoken. Vivian is outspoken. I could see that even at 2.5. And that's good. That's good. That's who she is. You know, mommy is part of her.
Speaking out is a responsibility Rich shoulders now to sound the alarm.
I'm certainly driven to make sure that solutions are found. People speak out. One of the issues with lung cancer is that people don't survive, and there are very few voices to talk about this. People need to know what's going on.
It's just heart-wrenching to watch. Healthy, non-smokers, athletic in many cases. So, any
there are
idea?
so many of them.
So many of them. Any idea of the causes, the possible causes?
Well, there are the known causes, which is we know that smoking is the #1 cause of lung cancer. Obviously, that wasn't the case with these two. We know that radon can also cause lung cancer. And we also know that asbestos exposure can cause lung cancer. The big mystery is what in the environment is causing it in these otherwise healthy people that haven't been exposed to any of these things. It could be environmental. It's possible it could be hereditary in some way. We just don't know. And the federal research dollars have to come in order for us to be able to solve these mysteries and answer the questions.
Find some kind of an answer to this.
That's right.
Beating the odds, the story of a survivor when we return in just 70 seconds.
Coming up next, touching home.
I know what it feels like. I was there when my mom got the news. When lung cancer strikes, it is crushing. That's when the glaring reality sinks in. This is the deadliest of all cancers. It kills more people every year than colorectal, breast, prostate, and pancreatic cancer combined. 85% don't survive. Can you imagine getting that diagnosis? I know what it feels like. I was there when my mom got the news. When you got your diagnosis, I fell apart.
I know, and so did your sister. And I felt I needed to prop you two up and your dad. I wasn't frightened.
Mom was convinced her path would be different, and she was right. It's been nearly 2 years.
I'm doing great. He said on my last checkup that my lungs have never looked better.
Because her cancer was found in the earliest stage, when it's treatable with surgery.
This was such a out of the blue thing. You have a tumor in your lung. Okay, get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. But I was never sick. If I was sick, I suppose I would have felt, oh, this is the end, some doom and gloom, but I wasn't.
How much does an early diagnosis change the outcome for someone with lung cancer?
Changes everything.
It certainly did for Diane Legg, a rare 5-year lung cancer survivor.
At the time when I was diagnosed, Will, my youngest, was 1 year old. And I remembered thinking, would I be here when he went to kindergarten? Yoda ponders the Force. So this September, when we walked hand in hand to kindergarten, it was a pretty big moment for me.
For the living, celebration is often mixed with regret. Here in the Bay State, deep friendships develop in the lung cancer community. Friendships that are almost always cut short.
It's sad for me in some aspects only because I've lost so many friends in the last 5 years.
Why hasn't the mortality rate changed in 40 years?
Most lung cancers are diagnosed when they're already advanced. And this taps into the issue of the lack of effective screening for lung cancer. And it's actually quite pathetic that for a disease that kills the most patients in the United States, that we don't have any effective screening strategy.
CT scans are remarkably effective, but they come with radiation risks and can lead to biopsying spots or lesions that are perfectly benign.
To actually biopsy it or take the lesion out requires putting people to sleep and making an incision in the side of your chest wall.
And the many questions. Who should be screened? Only smokers? People over age 50? CT scans found early lung cancer in both my mom and Diane, but by fluke. The tests were ordered for something unrelated.
You really want for other people the benefit of the information that you got at the stage you got it.
Everybody should have the chance I got, because it's my life. And I sit in the office every 3 months and wait and see all the other patients come in. And I can tell the ones that weren't as lucky as me.
But recent breakthroughs have given new hope.
What I'm holding here is an actual slice of my mom's tumor. Now, her lung cancer was removed successfully during surgery, but if it ever comes back, what we're about to learn here in this Mass General Research Lab could be a key element of future treatment for her.
Mass General is using highly sophisticated tests to analyze each cancer's genes, looking for mutations. Some cancers, not all, have specific genetic mutations that, when identified, can radically change treatment.
This is the normal peak that we see for this gene BRAF, and here in your mother's sample, we actually see a mutation in this gene.
When you see these kinds of things, you realize you don't have to use the standard chemotherapy for lung cancer, correct?
Exactly. There are other options.
Targeted study drugs, just a pill a day in some cases, capable of killing cancer cells without harming healthy ones, even when the lung cancer is advanced.
We found that almost all of the patients had tumor shrinkage, and patients stayed on this therapy and survived with their lung cancer for 2 to 3 times longer than had typically been seen with advanced lung cancer.
Personalized medicine with few side effects and enormous possibilities.
This is a patient of mine who's never smoker and had this tumor here in his right lung. We found one of the gene mutations in his cancer and put him on a targeted therapy. And then you can see the same area of the lung, it's completely gone. This is about 2.5 months later. It is really amazing the kinds of responses that you can see to these targeted therapies.
I've done this for 30 years, and what we can do in the last 5 years outpaces everything we did in the previous 25. And if that stays the same, you know, it's our hope that people don't have to look at this as a death sentence.
I know your mom. She spoke beautifully there, by the way.
Thank you. I think so too.
She really did. And how is she doing, and how's Diane doing?
Mom and Diane are both doing really well. The great thing about them is they've moved to scans every 6 months now. Diane is just about 6 years past her diagnosis, which is incredible. My mom's about 2.5 years. They're both, their doctors are watching spots that are on both of their lungs. But they haven't come to the point where they have to treat them yet. And as long as that's the case, they won't have to go into that. The good news with both of them is they both had their tumors tested. And in both my mom and Diane, they were able to identify a specific genetic mutation. And they're both different. These are very different types of cancer. But each one has a specific medicine that is known to work on that type of genetic mutation, so that if either one of them becomes ill from cancer, then they can pull the trigger and use those drugs.
The cost of that, though, is that covered?
The genetic testing is now widely recognized as being very effective. So it costs about $2,000. Most insurance companies will cover the cost of it. So all of the experts that I've talked to say, get your tumors tested if you have lung cancer. It's a valuable piece of information.
Good advice. The research gap when Chronicle continues.
Well, this is like a book of pictures.
What Ian and Jessica Riley wish they had are more memories with their mom.
Did you collect sea glass with her?
Yeah.
Yeah, she loved the beach and pool.
Yeah.
The Cape trips, the bike rides, dance recitals, wonderful times together. But there won't be any more. Lung cancer took Kathy Loving's life.
Oh my God, our worlds were just turned completely upside down.
And Dennis Riley wants to get the word out that sooner or later, it could steal someone you love.
If she were here and healthy today, she'd be the one talking to you. But now that she's gone, I feel like I've got to tell her story.
Kathy wasn't a smoker. She and her family learned the hard way. This is not just a smoker's disease.
You can't win the war on cancer without winning the war on lung cancer. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. And people just assume that, oh, we'll deal with that when we get the smoking levels down.
That assumption is dead wrong.
We've gone from the majority of Americans smoking to about 20% now.
But that hasn't lowered the death rate.
You know, there was a great ad by the Lung Cancer Alliance that actually came out the month Kathy was diagnosed. They ran a full-page ad in the Boston Globe. There's a picture of a woman about Kathy's age, and it said, "This lung cancer patient can't stop smoking." And then on the bottom it said, "It's because she never started." And then told the statistics. And I thought that was brilliant. I mean, that just turns the perception right on its head.
Yet doctors say patients still have to fight the smoking stigma.
There's almost this sense, well, if you smoke, that you somehow deserve this awful disease, which seems to me a bit crazy.
Even crazier, why lung, the deadliest of all cancers, gets only a fraction of the federal research dollars given to study breast, prostate, and colon cancers. Lung cancer kills more men and women than all of those cancers combined.
Hi, Megan. This is Diane Legg with Lung Cancer Alliance.
That's what drives Diane Legg to advocacy.
And we are talking to you about the Lung Cancer Mortality Reduction Act. It is Senate Bill 332. I was wondering where Senator Kerry was on this particular bill.
She's a rare 5-year lung cancer survivor, fighting for public support.
What does it matter if I smoked or not smoked? No one is deserving of this disease.
You can actually change the course of the disease.
And fighting for change, a new comprehensive approach to lung cancer. No more excuses.
Particularly here in Massachusetts, we're very good with smoking cessation and prevention. But the thing is, you also need early detection. You need a screening protocol. You need treatments.
Dana-Farber's Dr. Bruce Johnson says Diane is onto something. After colonoscopies, mammograms, and PSA tests became available, mortality rates for colon, breast, and prostate cancer fell.
It's hard to argue against the timing relationship between when the screening became available and when the death rates began to fall from those cancers.
Dr. Leisha Sequist says that's because it's not enough to know the warning signs.
There are very few symptoms, and the symptoms that someone might have, it could be anything. You have a cough, you have a little trouble breathing. Well, a lot of people have a cough or a little trouble breathing, and most of the time it's not cancer. So it can be difficult for doctors to diagnose lung cancer before it has spread.
The new face of lung cancer is younger, healthier, and little understood, and that's unlikely to change without greater priority. For Dennis Riley, there's an obvious solution. Tap the nation's $200 billion tobacco settlement, largely used by most states to plug budget holes, and give lung cancer the funding it deserves.
The money's there, and it's coming from the right source. It's not coming from taxpayers. That money is coming from the tobacco industry, and that money was supposed to be used for healthcare reasons, the kinds of health problems that cigarettes caused, and none of it's being used. That's ridiculous.
We ran this show first in March. We got a lot of viewer feedback. They wanted to know two things. One, how do they get involved and help? And also, what about radon? Is that a possible problem?
And radon is a problem. It's a known cause of lung cancer. And the problem with radon is it's odorless, it's tasteless, you can't smell it. It could be present in your home, it could be present in your office. And what it does is it comes up through this rocky foundation that we have here in Massachusetts and really all of New England. You can have a professional radon inspection done, or you can do like I did here and go to any hardware store and you will find these test kits. They cost about $10, so it's not a big expense. You leave it out for, there's little jars in it. You leave it out for a couple of days. You send it into the company and you get the results back within several weeks.
And you did that, right?
I did, and it wasn't a problem in our house, but I have had a problem in a house before, and you can get a radon remediation venting system to pump that radon right out of your basement. So there's a fix for it, which is important.
And an inexpensive way to find out if that's an issue.
And if we have time, in terms of getting involved,
Absolutely.
we need people to speak out because there just aren't enough advocates because so many people tragically have died from this. There's an opportunity coming up, and I hope you'll take advantage of it and join me. Shine a light on lung cancer. It's November 4th at the Prudential Center. Things get started at 6 p.m. that night. And we're going to light up the Prudential Center. A couple hundred people will be there. And you want to know how you can get involved, that's the best way to do it. You'll meet Diane Legg. You'll meet all kinds of advocates for this disease.
And as you point out, with an 85% mortality rate, there just aren't that many advocates out there.
No, so we've got to do something on their behalf. We've got to make some noise. We've got to get some attention because it's only when the government starts realizing that people are squawking about this that we're not going to be silent about this anymore and let the stigma dictate. that finally we'll get some research dollars to get to the bottom of treatments and what is behind this rise in lung cancer.
Very important topic. Thank you.
You're
for doing
welcome.
that.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Excellent, and very interesting. That's Chronicle for tonight. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Anthony Everett. Have a good evening. We'll see you again tomorrow night.